Many were lost to the train fight in the previous year. Ticklebot, though brave, was very short-lived. He sacrificed himself to give time for the others to escape. Ultimately, nobody could fully decide whether the fight was a success or not. They managed to take down many monstrosities and slightly damage Zeroy, but in turn, for their own people and Ticklebot, just may not have been worth it. Through the year, after the Battle of the Train, the people have been preparing to give their all in one final and ultimate battle. They would either come out victorious or dead. No other option was left. Tanks nearly the size of buildings were prepared, along with the ever-expanding robot army. To serve in place of Ticklebot, they created a potentially even stronger robot known as Hiccupbot. He was much bulkier in size, making him slower, but much more fortified. Hiccupbot would serve as commander of the robot army in place of Ticklebot. The day had come. It was time to take back the island and to finish off Zeroy. On the southern end of the island, the tanks began to roll out. Zeroy's monstrosities stood no chance against the massive tanks. Each bullet shot from a tank left craters in the ground, instantly killing any monstrosities in its path. Hiccupbot led his army and hundreds of robots, all taking steps in synchronization. They shook the ground they marched on and took down tons of monstrosities that came by. It was clear that Zeroy's monstrosities were losing this fight. The technological advancements that the people had made in preparation for this final fight was much more than Zeroy anticipated. Finally, Zeroy flew out above the battleground. He watched explosions scattered about, seeing the deaths of his enemies, but mostly the deaths of his own monstrosities. He flew down towards a crowd of people, crashing and leaving a crater behind. The survivors from the attack fought back, but Zeroy didn't flinch. He kept marching forward and killing. The robot army arrived to intervene with Zeroy's destruction. Zeroy looked at the horizon, seeing it covered by mechanical soldiers, all led by one larger machine. Hiccupbot stood tall in front of his men, pointing slowly at Zeroy. A wave of caps covered the sky, all coming from the robotic army. The caps were coming straight down towards Zeroy. He looked around for cover, but none was there. Suddenly, a tank from the distance shot a shell right towards Zeroy. He floated up slowly, watching the surge of caps close in on him, while focusing on the tank shell charging right at him. He suddenly and gracefully dodged around the shell as it was about to strike him, gripping the sides of it. Zeroy had averted the tank's shell explosion by catching it. He then twisted and threw the shell up into the wave of caps above him. When the caps hit the shell, it exploded, sending the caps everywhere, but they were originally targeted. The devastation from the wave of the caps killed many of the people and robotic soldiers, but they kept pushing. One failed attack on Zeroy wasn't enough to stop their pursuit for victory. Zeroy flew through the crowds of people and robots, killing them as he went through. But as time went on and more were being killed, many people started to run for their lives. Zeroy was not slowing, and Hiccupbot couldn't bear to watch any more die. Zeroy suddenly got slammed into the ground. He looked up to see Hiccupbot flying there, almost exactly like how Ticklebot did that last year. Zeroy bolted right back up, smashing his fists into Hiccupbot's metal body. The robot was much stronger than Ticklebot, but even still received heavy damage from Zeroy's utter strength. The two dueled, flying around the sky and exchanging barrages of punches and hits. Meanwhile, the people were suffering from Zeroy's attacks on them. Many succumbed to their injuries, and others died on the spot. The Kraton and Zephian population was shrinking shorter and shorter by the minute. Zeroy suddenly struck Hiccupbot with a brutal attack, sending him straight into the ground. The robotic army rushed to help fix him. Hiccupbot was immensely damaged, while Zeroy floated in the sky with few scratches and dents. Before any repairs could even be made, Zeroy flew down and crashed right where Hiccupbot rested. Zeroy gripped the robot's arm and ripped it cleanly off. Hiccupbot screamed in agony, and Zeroy grabbed his other arm. Zeroy continued to rip off Hiccupbot piece by piece. Sparks shot through the air and robotic screams echoed. Eventually, the screams stopped. Zeroy slowly stood back up and turned around. He was completely surrounded by absolutely massive tanks. He floated up and bolted right through the hull of one of the tanks. The other tanks fired at the one Zeroy was inside, but the armor on the tank was seemingly just too strong to penetrate with their own tank shells. The tank Zeroy was inside of slowly started to rise in the air. Zeroy's below it, lifting the giant, building-sized tank into the air. He then hurled it at another tank, crashing the two into each other and causing the ground-shaking explosion. Zeroy continued flying around, picking up debris and launching it at people. He continued taking out every tank by breaking inside and hurling it wherever he wanted. Zeroy killed and killed, never slowing for anything. The people had no choice but to surrender and run for their lives. Hickabot was dead, and the robotic army was shortened immensely. The population of people had never been so small, and Zeroy had never made so many monstrosities before. The end truly had come for the people. The robotic army was completely killed, and all due to the sheer amount of monstrosities and from Zeroy himself. There were only about 94 Kratons and 33 Zephians left. All of them were hiding for their life. Zeroy slowly checked around every corner, finding ones that were hiding from him still. If Zeroy didn't find a group of hiders, the monstrosities eventually would. One by one, every single person perished by the hands of Zeroy and his monstrosities. Every single person was dead. Kratons and Zephians, all extinct.